The ballroom glowed with golden lights. Music pulsed. Laughter echoed across the dance floor. In the corner sat a young woman in an elegant gown, a thick scar covering half her face. A group of wealthy young men sneered nearby. Who'd dance with her? She should have stayed home. At the head table, her father, a powerful CEO, sat rigid, jaw clenched in silent agony. Then, out of nowhere, a waiter carrying a tray of glasses walked forward. He set the tray down carefully, straightened his uniform, and bowed. "May I have this dance?" The entire room froze. The music seemed to soften. The CEO father wiped his eyes, his heart ready to burst. Daniel Cole was 36 years old, a single father working double shifts as a waiter at the Grandview Hotel, the kind of place where chandeliers cost more than his yearly salary, where guests wore watches worth more than his car. But Daniel never complained. Every night, he came home to his 9-year-old daughter Ella, who believed her daddy was the greatest hero in the world. She would run to the door, throw her arms around his waist, and ask about his day like he had just returned from saving the universe. In his pocket, Daniel always carried an old handkerchief, faded blue fabric with tiny yellow flowers. It had belonged to his late wife, Ella's mother, who passed away when Ella was just 2. He never went anywhere without it. It was his reminder, his anchor. Tonight was different. Tonight was the Lane Corporation's anniversary gala. 500 guests, live orchestra, open bar. Daniel had been assigned to the VIP section, which meant longer hours but better tips. He needed those tips. Ella's school trip was coming up, and he had promised her she could go. Across the ballroom, in a private corner booth, sat Sophia Lane, 24 years old, daughter of Victor Lane, the CEO of Lane Corporation. She wore a stunning midnight blue gown that swept the floor. Her hair was styled perfectly. Her jewelry sparkled under the lights. But none of that mattered to the people staring at her, because on the left side of her face, from her temple down to her jaw, was a thick, jagged scar, the result of a car accident 3 years ago, an accident that had stolen her confidence, her social life, and her smile. Sophia had begged her father not to make her come tonight, but Victor Lane insisted. He wanted the world to see his daughter. He wanted her to reclaim her place. He wanted her to be brave. But bravery is hard when people whisper, when they stare, when they pretend not to notice while noticing everything. Victor sat at the head table, surrounded by business partners and executives. He smiled when he needed to, shook hands when expected, but his eyes kept drifting to his daughter, alone in the corner, chin tucked down, hands folded in her lap. His heart ached. He was one of the most powerful men in the city. He could close million-dollar deals with a phone call. He could fire anyone who disrespected him, but he could not protect his daughter from cruelty. He could not force people to see her the way he did. Beautiful, strong, brave. Daniel noticed her too. He had been refilling champagne glasses near her section when he saw the way she sat, the way she avoided eye contact, the way her shoulders curled inward, like she was trying to disappear. He recognized that posture. He had seen it before, in the mirror, after his wife died, when the world felt too heavy and too loud. Ella had pulled him out of that darkness, with her laughter, with her hugs, with her unshakable belief that her daddy could do anything. And tonight, looking at Sophia Lane sitting alone in a room full of people, Daniel felt something stir in his chest. Not pity, not sympathy, recognition. The music shifted to something upbeat. Couples flooded the dance floor. Laughter rang out. Glasses clinked. The energy in the room soared, except in Sophia's corner. A group of young men in expensive suits hovered near the bar, their voices just loud enough to carry. They were sons of investors, trust fund kids who had never worked a real day in their lives. One of them, a tall guy with slick back hair, nodded towards Sophia and smirked. Man, I almost feel bad for Lane. All that money and he is stuck with that. Another one laughed. Dude, no amount of cash can fix that face. Not even the best plastic surgeons. A third chimed in, louder this time. Who would even dance with her? She should have stayed home. They erupted into laughter. Cruel, careless, loud enough that nearby guests glanced over uncomfortably but said nothing. Sophia heard every word. Her hands tightened in her lap until her knuckles turned white. Her breathing quickened. She wanted to leave. She wanted to run out and never come back. But her father had asked her to stay. So she stayed, because she loved him, even though every second felt like torture. Across the room, a group of women whispered behind their champagne flutes. Poor Victor, one said, shaking her head. Such a successful man. Built an empire from nothing, but stuck with a daughter like that. What a tragedy. Another woman sighed. Money can buy designer clothes and luxury cars, but it cannot buy beauty. That girl is a broken doll. A third woman leaned in. I heard she refuses to go out anymore. Can you blame her? If I looked like that, I would hide too. The words sliced through the air like knives. Victor Lane heard them. He sat at the head table, surrounded by executives who laughed at his jokes. But inside, he was dying. His fists clenched, his jaw locked tight. Every muscle screamed at him to stand up and defend his daughter, but he could not. He knew it would make things worse. It would draw more attention. So he sat there, powerless, angry, heartbroken. Sophia felt the tears coming. She blinked hard, trying to stop them. She had promised herself she would not cry tonight, but one tear slipped free, then another. She had survived the accident, the crash that flipped her car 3 times. She had survived 17 surgeries. The pain, the infections, the endless hospital rooms. But this public humiliation felt unbearable. No one approached her. No one smiled. No one asked her to dance. She watched as couples twirled past her table, laughing and carefree. She watched as strangers paired up and joined the dance floor. But no one looked her way. She was invisible, and yet, she was the most visible person in the room. The music swelled, a romantic ballad. Sophia closed her eyes. She imagined what it would feel like to be held, to be seen, to be wanted. But it was just a fantasy. Then, something shifted. Daniel Cole, still holding his empty serving tray, stopped in the middle of the ballroom. He had just finished clearing a table. He was supposed to head back to the kitchen, refill glasses, grab more appetizers, keep working. But he did not move. He looked at Sophia, at the way her head was bowed, at the way her body seemed to fold into itself, at the way no one seemed to care. His chest tightened. His daughter's voice echoed in his mind. That morning, Ella had hugged him and said, Daddy, you always help people. That is what heroes do. Daniel set the tray down. He wiped his hands on his apron. He straightened his bow tie. He took a deep breath. And then he walked, not quickly, not hesitantly, just steady, calm, purposeful, toward Sophia. The room did not notice at first. The music played, the dancing continued. But as Daniel got closer, a few people turned, then a few more. Conversations faltered. Eyes followed him. Whispers started. What is he doing? Is he going over there? A waiter? By the time he reached Sophia's table, half the room was watching. Daniel stopped in front of her. He clasped his hands behind his back. And then he bowed. A deep, respectful bow. Excuse me, miss, he said, his voice calm and clear. May I have this dance? The room went silent. The music seemed to fade. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. Every eye locked on them. Sophia looked up, eyes wide with shock. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She stared at him like he was a mirage. Daniel smiled gently. You do not have to if you do not want to. but I would be honored. Sophia's voice came out in a whisper. You are, you are a waiter. Daniel nodded. I am, and you are the bravest woman in this room. Her breath caught, her eyes filled with fresh tears. But this time they were different. Not tears of pain, not tears of humiliation, tears of hope. Behind her, Victor Lane stood up slowly from his seat. His hand covered his mouth. His eyes glistened. He watched, frozen, as the impossible unfolded. Around the room, the whispers started again. Is he serious? A waiter is asking her to dance? What is happening? Daniel extended his hand, palm up, steady, patient, waiting. Sophia stared at him, at the kindness in his eyes, at the courage it took to do what no one else had dared. And then, trembling, she placed her hand in his. The ballroom erupted, not in laughter, not in mockery, in stunned, breathless silence. Daniel led Sophia to the center of the dance floor. His hand was gentle on her back. His grip was firm but respectful. She trembled as they took their first step together. The orchestra, sensing the moment, shifted to a slow ballad, the kind of song that makes time stop, the kind that makes people remember why they fell in love. Around them, the crowd parted. Guests stood frozen, watching, some with curiosity, some with judgment, some with something that looked like shame. Sophia kept her eyes down at first. She could feel hundreds of stares burning into her skin, into her scar. She wanted to pull away, to run, to disappear. But Daniel did not let her. Look at me, he said softly. Not at them, just me. She lifted her eyes, met his gaze, and in that moment, something inside her shifted. His eyes held no pity, no disgust, no awkwardness, just warmth, just kindness, just respect. They began to move, slowly at first. Daniel guided her with patience, reading her body language, letting her set the pace. One step, then another, and then Sophia smiled, a small smile, fragile, uncertain, but real. It was the first genuine smile she had worn in 3 years. At the head table, Victor Lane covered his face with both hands. His shoulders shook. Tears streamed down his cheeks. He had not seen his daughter smile like that since before the accident, since before the world became cruel. She is smiling, he whispered to himself. My baby girl is smiling. The music swelled. Daniel twirled Sophia gently. Her dress spun out like midnight waves. A few people in the crowd began to clap. Then a few more. Then more. Then, from the side entrance, a small voice cried out, Daddy! Everyone turned. A little girl in a pink dress came running across the ballroom floor. Her hair was in messy pigtails. She clutched a piece of paper in her hand. It was Ella, Daniel's daughter. She had been waiting in the staff lounge, coloring while her father worked. But when she heard the music change, when she heard the whispers, she had peeked through the door, and she had seen her daddy dancing with the sad lady from the corner. So she did what any 9-year-old would do. She drew a picture. Ella ran up to the dance floor, breathless and excited. She held up her drawing for everyone to see. It was a crayon masterpiece. A tall man in a bow tie, a beautiful woman in a blue dress. They were holding hands above them, in wobbly letters. She had written, Daddy dancing with a princess. The ballroom went silent. Then, someone laughed. Not a mocking laugh, a warm laugh, a touched laugh. Then more laughter. The good kind. The kind that breaks tension and melts hearts. Sophia looked at the drawing, at the little girl beaming up at her, at the innocence and honesty in those bright eyes, and she started to cry, but not sad tears, happy tears. She knelt down, still holding Daniel's hand, and smiled at Ella. Thank you, she whispered. That is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me. Ella threw her arms around Sophia's neck. You are pretty, she said. Do not let anyone tell you different. The crowd erupted, not in whispers, not in judgment, in applause. Loud, roaring, genuine applause. Victor stood up from his seat. He walked toward the dance floor, wiping his eyes, his heart bursting with emotion. He looked at Daniel, at this stranger who had done what no one else dared to do. Thank you, Victor said, his voice breaking. You gave her back her smile. After all these years, you gave her back her smile. Daniel shook his head humbly. She never lost it, sir. She just needed a reason to show it again. Then something caught Victor's eye. As Daniel reached down to pick up Ella, something fell from his jacket pocket. A small piece of fabric, faded blue with tiny yellow flowers. A handkerchief. Victor froze. His breath caught. He bent down and picked it up. His fingers traced the embroidery along the edge. Initials, stitched in gold thread. M.M.L. Michael Lane. Victor's hands began to shake. His brother, his older brother, the one who had died serving overseas, the one who had saved 3 men in his unit before he was killed, the one whose body came home draped in a flag. Michael had always carried this handkerchief. Their mother had made it for him before he deployed. Victor looked up at Daniel, his face pale. Where did you get this? Daniel's expression changed. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Michael Lane, he said quietly. He was my commanding officer. He saved my life in Kandahar, pulled me out of a burning vehicle. I tried to save him, but I could not. Before he died, he gave me this, told me to give it to his family, but I never knew how to find them. I never knew his last name was Lane. Victor staggered back. His mouth opened, but no words came. The room fell silent again. Everyone was listening now. You, Victor breathed. You were there. You were with him when he died. Daniel nodded. I held his hand. He told me to tell his family he loved them. He told me to tell his little brother to take care of their mother. And then he was gone. Victor covered his face with both hands. A sob escaped him. Raw, broken. He had spent 15 years wondering about his brother's final moments, wondering if he suffered, wondering if he was alone. And now, here was the man who had been with him, the man who had tried to save him, standing in his ballroom, wearing a waiter's uniform. You were a soldier, someone whispered from the crowd. He saved people. Someone else said. The whispers spread. The young men who had mocked Sophia earlier shifted uncomfortably. The women who had called her a broken doll looked away, ashamed. Daniel Cole was not just a waiter. He was a veteran, a hero, a man who had sacrificed his career, his future, everything, to raise his daughter alone after losing his wife. And tonight, he had given Sophia Lane something no amount of money could buy: dignity, respect, hope. Victor stepped forward. He pulled Daniel into a tight embrace. You brought my brother home to me tonight, he said, his voice trembling. Not his body, but his spirit, his kindness, his courage. Thank you. Sophia stood beside them, tears streaming down her face. Ella held her hand, squeezing tight, and the ballroom, full of wealthy guests who thought they knew what mattered, stood in silence, because they had just witnessed something none of them would ever forget. Victor Lane turned slowly to face the crowd. His eyes were red, but his jaw was set. His voice, when he spoke, was cold and sharp as steel. I want to address something, he said. Every head turned toward him. The ballroom fell silent. He pointed at the group of young men near the bar, the ones who had mocked his daughter. You, all of you, I heard what you said about my daughter tonight. The men froze. Their smirks vanished. Fear flickered across their faces. You called her broken. You said no one would dance with her. You laughed at her pain." Victor's voice grew louder. "You are not welcome in my company. Not tonight. Not ever. Security, escort them out." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Two security guards stepped forward. The young men stammered, trying to protest, but no one listened. They were led out of the ballroom, heads down, faces burning with shame. The crowd erupted in applause. Not polite applause. Thunderous applause. Victor turned to the women who had whispered cruel things. "And you," he said, his voice quieter but no less powerful. "You spoke about my daughter like she was an object, a burden, a tragedy. Let me be clear. My daughter is the strongest person I know. She survived what would have broken most people. And tonight, a man with nothing showed her more respect than any of you ever did." The women looked down, unable to meet his gaze. Several guests around them shifted away, distancing themselves. Victor raised his voice to address everyone. "Tonight, I learned something. Wealth does not make you valuable. Status does not make you kind. A waiter showed more courage than anyone in this room. A 9-year-old girl showed more compassion than grown adults." The applause grew louder. People stood. Some wiped their eyes. Sophia stepped forward, her hand still in Daniel's. She looked out at the crowd, at the people who had stared at her, judged her, pitied her, and for the first time in years, she did not feel small. "I want to say something too," she said. Her voice was soft at first, then stronger. "For 3 years, I have hidden. I have let this scar define me. I have let cruel words make me believe I was less than human. But tonight, someone reminded me that I am still here. I am still standing. I am still worthy." She turned to Daniel. "You did not see a scar when you looked at me. You saw a person. Thank you for that." Daniel smiled. "You are more than worthy, Miss Lane. You always were." Ella tugged on Sophia's dress. "Can we be friends?" she asked, eyes wide and hopeful. Sophia laughed through her tears. "I would love that." The crowd surged forward. People who had ignored Sophia all night now approached her. Some apologized. Some simply smiled. Some asked if they could take a photo with her. And Sophia, for the first time in 3 years, said yes. The ballroom was no longer cold, no longer judgmental. It was warm. It was alive. It was human again. The night wound down. The guests left one by one. The music faded. The lights dimmed. But in a quiet corner of the ballroom, 4 people sat together. Daniel, Ella, Sophia, and Victor. Ella had fallen asleep in Sophia's lap, her little arms wrapped around her new friend. Sophia stroked the girl's hair gently, a soft smile on her face. Victor sat across from Daniel, the handkerchief resting on the table between them. He had not let go of it since Daniel gave it back. "I spent 15 years angry," Victor said quietly. "Angry at the world for taking my brother. Angry at myself for not being there. Angry at everything. And then tonight, you walked into my life. A stranger. A waiter. And you gave me something I did not know I needed." "What is that?" Daniel asked. "Peace," Victor said simply. "Knowing that Michael was not alone, that someone cared, that someone tried." He paused. "And you gave my daughter something even more valuable. You gave her herself back." Sophia looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. "I forgot what it felt like to be seen," she said softly. "Not stared at, not pitied, just seen. As a person, as someone worth knowing." Daniel shook his head. "You were always worth knowing, Miss Lane. The world just needed to catch up." Victor leaned forward. "I want to offer you a job, a real job, not as a waiter, something better. You deserve better." But Daniel raised a hand gently. "I appreciate that, sir. I really do. But I am good where I am. I have my daughter. I have my work. I have everything I need. Victor smiled sadly. You are a rare man, Daniel Cole. No, Daniel said. I am just a man who knows what matters. He looked down at Ella, asleep and peaceful. She thinks I am a hero. And maybe tonight, I got to be one. Not because I am strong, not because I am brave, but because I chose to see someone who needed to be seen. Sophia reached across the table and took Daniel's hand. You are a hero, she said. To me, to her, to my father. Do not ever doubt that. Daniel smiled. Then I will try to live up to it. They sat together in comfortable silence. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, 4 lives had changed forever. As Daniel finally stood to leave, carrying Ella in his arms, he turned back one last time. Scars do not make us less, he said. They remind us we survived. Tonight, a dance proved that louder than any words ever could. Victor and Sophia watched them go, father and daughter, hand in hand, disappearing into the night, and in the empty ballroom, under the fading lights, hope lingered like the final note of a song. Subscribe if you believe real beauty is courage that never fades.